Welcome to the deep dive. We are here to take the comprehensive blueprints of complex professional communication and really distill them down to the functional knowledge you need right now to sound immediately credible.
Exactly. We are cutting through all the academic noise today to give you the operational language. The goal is simple. When you walk into your next high-stakes meeting or, sit down to write that crucial career-defining email, you should feel not just informed, but linguistically equipped.
That's right. Our source material today is, well, it's perhaps the most practical document we've ever processed, a comprehensive toolkit of essential business English communication phrases. And this deep dive is unique because we're not just focused on general vocabulary.
No, not at all.
We are focused on achieving total functional fluency in the corporate dialect, the precise language that signals procedural competence.
And our mission for you, the learner, is this. Corporate fluency is really defined by knowing the exact phrases, the ones used to manage time, mitigate risk, negotiate boundaries, and guide projects with, real precision.
So we're extracting the most powerful linguistic tools.
The ones that demonstrate you understand the process, not just the words.
Okay, so we aren't reviewing grammar rules. We are analyzing the functional architecture of professional interaction.
Exactly. Mastering this targeted vocabulary, which our source material organizes across, I think, over a dozen critical business contexts, it instantly elevates your credibility and clarity. If you use the correct phrase, you are signaling to everyone that you grasp the underlying corporate methodology, whether that's, say, finance, project management, or stakeholder relations.
Okay, let's unpack this operational blueprint. And let's start where most professional work begins, the structured, real-time discussion. Part one is all about establishing structure and control in meetings and formal logistics.
Right. And this foundational language segment dictates the flow and the formality of every single interaction that follows. We need to analyze the specific phrases used to initiate, steer, and conclude discussions efficiently, and pay really close attention to the hierarchy they imply.
Right away, the sources give us a spectrum of formality in how we start. At the, let's say, the low commitment internal check-in level, we have the approachable, "Good morning, everyone. Shall we get started?"
That phrase is cooperative. It's an invitation to begin, it seeks informal consent from the participants. It's perfectly suited for a casual team stand-up or maybe a project update where everyone is more or less peer-to-peer.
But then you compare that to the highly decisive, almost ritualistic declaration you hear in more senior or formal settings. "I'd like to call this meeting to order."
Such a different vibe.
A huge difference. That distinction is critical. "I'd like to call this meeting to order" is, well, it's a legalistic phrase. It doesn't ask for permission at all.
No, it announces the official initiation of a formal process.
Exactly.
It's the language of a board meeting or a shareholder assembly or maybe a critical sign-off session where the implications might be legal, budgetary, or even regulatory. When you use that phrase, you establish immediate, explicit control over the room and the process. You're signaling that the rules of formal procedure are now in effect.
Which means comments have to be structured, documented.
Precisely.
And once the meeting is underway, how do you handle the inevitable drift? We need language to secure attention midstream. The source provides the polite but firm demand. "Could we please have your attention for a moment?"
And just notice the layers of politeness there. Could we please have, you're seeking control, but you are wrapping that demand in professional deference. You aren't cutting people off or, raising your voice. You are formally requesting a necessary pause or a shift in focus. It maintains the professional dignity of the room while reasserting structure.
So, once attention is secured, the next immediate language tool is agenda setting. You have to explicitly signal the transition. The most common phrase is that functional marker. Let's move on to the next item on the agenda.
That is the absolute workhorse of a meeting facilitator. It's a transition phrase that just keeps the locomotive moving. But even before that, a successful meeting leader, they'll start with a proactive structural announcement. I'd like to begin by outlining our agenda for today.
And why is that opening structure so crucial?
Well, it manages expectations and it sets boundaries. By outlining the agenda, you create a roadmap, but you also implicitly create a kind of contract with the attendees. These are the only topics we will cover, and in this specific order.
So it preempts later attempts to introduce unrelated issues.
Exactly. You can just refer back to the agreed-upon structure.
Okay, but structural breakdowns are a constant threat, right? Tangents are what we call scope creep in conversation. We need the language to gently but firmly steer and refocus the discussion.
And this is where we see the power of tactful management language. The phrase, "I think we're getting off track here, can we refocus?" is, well, it's a masterful redirect. It uses the softening introduction, "I think we're done," rather than the more accusatory, "you are getting off
Oh,
track."
that's a key distinction.
It is. Its function is immediate efficiency maintenance. It stops the tangent without explicitly calling out or, embarrassing the person who introduced it. That linguistic choice preserves psychological safety while reasserting the agenda.
That careful balancing act, maintaining control while preserving relationships, is just so vital. And equally important is the deferral tactic. This is managing time by deciding what not to discuss right now. This is where we see the strategic power of, "I'd like to table this discussion for our next meeting."
Tabling is one of the most misused yet powerful phrases in business communication. In parliamentary procedure, it traditionally meant to postpone indefinitely. But in modern corporate business English, it means deferring it until later. It is a commitment to return to the topic, but it asserts the facilitator's absolute control over the current scope and time block.
But strategically, what if you want to kill a bad idea without appearing dismissive? Can tabling be used for that?
Absolutely. That is its strategic dark side, if you will.
Hmm.
You can table an idea that lacks necessary data or, political support, essentially putting it into administrative purgatory. You aren't saying no, which can burn bridges.
You're saying not right now.
Exactly. You're saying, yes, this is important, but not right now, which manages the proponent's expectation. You may never actually schedule that next meeting, or you might use the time to gather evidence that gently disproves the idea.
That is a fascinating linguistic mechanism for organizational soft power. The more specific version, "Could we table the pricing discussion and focus on the contract terms first?" is a great example of sequencing control.
It is. It prioritizes the necessary steps.
Yeah.
You can't really discuss pricing if the terms of service haven't been agreed upon. It's a mechanism for managing the sequence and the logic of the negotiation, which are essential project management skills articulated purely through language.
And before any content is even addressed, you often need to preempt chaos. The source includes a phrase about proactive management. Let's establish some ground rules before we begin the discussion.
That is the language of setting normative expectations. If you are introducing a contentious topic or involving stakeholders with known friction points, this phrase is just essential. It suggests the need for clarity on participation limits, on speaking time, rules about interrupting, or how decisions will be reached.
So you're priming the environment.
You're priming it for productivity before you introduce complex or difficult content.
Okay, let's move to conclusion and next steps. The language of closure is so critical to turn all that debate back into tangible commitment. The final check before dispersal is, would anyone like to add anything before we conclude?
This demonstrates procedural fairness. It's the final opportunity for the participants to contribute before the window officially closes. And immediately following that, the transition to action planning must involve clear commitment language.
Such as a classic example, "I'll send out the meeting minutes by end of business today."
And that phrase is a triple threat. It defines who is responsible, I, what they are responsible for, minutes, and when it will be delivered, end of business today. This clarity minimizes ambiguity, it sets an explicit deadline, and establishes accountability immediately, ensuring that the momentum generated in the meeting doesn't just dissipate.
And we have to account for continuity, turning an open item into a future scheduled block of time. Let's schedule a follow-up meeting to discuss this further.
This is a form of scope management. Instead of letting an unresolved issue just hang vaguely in the air, you move it out of the current workflow and assign it a future container. It keeps projects moving by systematically dealing with decision blocks.
And then, recognizing that sometimes life intervenes and commitments have to change, we need the polite alteration phrase. Could we possibly reschedule this meeting for next week?
The careful use of possibly and the question form, could we, ensures professional politeness when you're altering a hard existing commitment. This phrase respects the recipient's time and implies that the rescheduling is due to a necessary constraint, not just, a whim. The language softens the logistical friction of changing plans.
That comprehensive look at real-time structured interaction brings us to the asynchronous side of business. Part 2 dives into the art of professional correspondence, email, follow-up, and general requests.
Right, so we are shifting gears from verbal control to documented clarity. Email is where tone is so fragile and clarity is just paramount. The goal here is setting the correct professional tone and ensuring that the communication loop is always closed clearly.
Starting with emails, let's address the mandatory boilerplate that our sources highlight. I hope this email finds you well is the standard polite entry point. The critique is often that this phrase signals insincerity because everyone knows it's robotic. What's the expert take on its necessity?
That's a fair challenge. And while it can feel robotic, its necessity is structural and psychological. It's the linguistic handshake that establishes professional distance and respect before you get to the substantive demand. It's a non-intrusive, low-risk acknowledgement of the recipient's personhood before diving into the business transaction. It really functions as a buffer.
So it's safe.
It's the safest, most universally understood marker of formal politeness, especially when communicating across cultural lines or with senior leadership you don't know well. While a modern colleague might use something warmer like, "Hope you had a good weekend," the original phrase is still the standard.
Okay, so it's a standard convention that provides procedural safety. And once past the opening, we often need to express immediate gratitude and efficiency. Thank you for your prompt response is essential, especially when people deliver on time.
Acknowledging timeliness is a mechanism of positive reinforcement. You are reinforcing the expected standard of responsiveness. You reward the behavior you want to see repeated. It keeps the professional momentum going and subtly sets a benchmark for future interactions.
Now on to follow-up and status updates. The key here is connecting the dots, explicitly linking current communication to past events. The sources highlight grounding phrases like, "I'm writing to follow up on our conversation."
This is crucial for cognitive efficiency. In a world of hundreds of daily emails, providing immediate context saves the recipient the mental energy of trying to recall the previous interaction or where this topic even came from. Similarly, I wanted to touch base with you regarding the upcoming deadline. Clearly defines the purpose and urgency of the message instantly, allowing the recipient to prioritize.
When requesting information, we need clear and functional inquiry language. Could you please provide an update on the project status? Simple, functional, and it's phrased as a polite inquiry, not a demand.
Right. And we cannot overlook the documentation and attachments formality. The standard is absolute. Please find the attached document for your review. Why is this simple phrasing so important? Because using variations like "I attached the file" where the file is below can risk sounding unprofessional or careless. Please find attached is the expected procedural marker that confirms an enclosure exists and mandates the recipient's attention to it.
Okay, shifting into managing requests and communication loops, let's discuss urgency. If you need a quick turnaround, you have to use strong professional verbs while remaining polite. The best tool is, "I would be grateful if you could expedite this request."
Expedite is the formal term for speed in the corporate lexicon. It lends the necessary gravity to the request without resorting to frantic informal language like "hurry up" or ASAP.
Right.
It signals that this delay has real, measurable business implications that necessitate moving the request ahead of others. And the politeness, "I would be grateful if you could," it cushions the urgency, making it a request for priority, not a mandate.
For transparency and delegation, we have the accountability loop. This addresses that concept you mentioned earlier, SOCT accountability. I'm CCing my manager to keep them in the loop on this discussion.
This is a highly strategic piece of language. It's a transparent way of bringing higher authority into the conversation without demanding their direct input. The soft accountability arises because the primary recipient now knows that their response, or lack thereof, is visible at a higher level of the organization.
Which definitely changes their incentive structure.
It does. They are far more likely to respond promptly and thoroughly when they know their manager has visibility on the thread.
So what are the risks of overusing that strategy? Can it backfire?
Oh, absolutely. Overuse risks creating an environment of mistrust or micromanagement. If you CC the manager on every single interaction, you imply that you don't trust your colleague to handle the task independently, or you just flood the manager's inbox, causing them to filter out genuinely important communications. It should really be reserved for material decisions, significant roadblocks, or critical handoffs.
Then we have closing the loop, providing an internal commitment about when information will arrive. I'll circle back with you once I have more information available.
"I'll circle back" is more than just a synonym for "I'll follow up." It is a defined commitment that takes ownership of the next step and manages the recipient's expectation. It tells them, "You don't need to chase me because I have explicitly taken responsibility for ensuring continuity."
It removes the burden from them.
Completely. It removes the onus from the recipient to initiate the next contact.
And finally, the essential closing line emphasizing availability. Please don't hesitate to contact me if you have any questions.
This phrase is, well, it's non-negotiable professional courtesy. It indicates accessibility, openness, and responsiveness. It reinforces the idea that the communication channel is collaborative and that you welcome inquiry, reinforcing professional goodwill even after the primary request has been made.
Okay, moving on to part 3, we're definitely leveling up the stakes here. This is about influencing and persuading the language used in presentations and negotiations. Here, the words aren't just functional, they're strategic tools designed to move resources, decisions, and people toward your perspective.
That's absolutely right. This language is active and it's deliberate. Whether you're presenting data to a board or negotiating terms with a partner, your language must simultaneously guide, validate, and persuade.
Let's start with presentation language, specifically when dealing with data and analysis. You need linguistic tools to guide the audience's attention to visual proof and, crucially, influence their interpretation of that proof. We see phrases like, "As you can see from this chart, our sales have increased significantly."
This is all about narrative control. The phrase performs a dual function. First, it directs attention, as you can see from this chart, making sure everyone's eyes are on the same visual. Second, it immediately provides the interpretation, our sales have increased significantly. This combination prevents misreading or, independent counterproductive analysis by the audience.
You're giving them the context and the conclusion at the same time?
Simultaneously.
Or even more specific guidance. I'd like to draw your attention to the key findings on slide 5. This is pure audience control, prioritizing information.
It manages the pace and highlights the critical path of your argument. In a data-dense presentation, this deliberate direction ensures that the audience focuses on the insights that validate your recommendation, rather than getting lost in peripheral data points.
For expanding and connecting ideas, we use language to deepen understanding and add substance. I'd like to elaborate on this point with a concrete example.
And that elaboration, especially with concrete examples, it anchors abstract data in reality. It makes the information sticky and memorable for the audience. And creating a seamless flow between sections is achieved with phrases like, this brings us to our next point about market expansion strategies. This transition signals a cohesive, well-planned narrative, demonstrating that your overall presentation is a logical, structured argument, which is inherently persuasive.
We also have to have language for drawing conclusions, summarizing and validating arguments based on the data presented. The source gives us. This data supports our hypothesis about customer behavior patterns.
That phrase transforms raw data into strategic validation. You are not simply reporting numbers. You are declaring that the numbers confirm a pre-existing or proposed strategic direction. The definitive summary statement, "In conclusion, I believe these results clearly demonstrate our success," leaves absolutely no ambiguity about the presenter's interpretation or their confidence in the findings.
And before jumping ahead, soliciting engagement is vital to ensure buy-in. Are there any questions before we move on to the next section?
This provides a deliberate and structured break. It confirms comprehension, and it offers a controlled environment for questions. It reinforces the methodical structure you established right at the beginning of the discussion.
Okay, now for the high-stakes environment. The language of negotiation, focusing on compromise and mutuality. The first step, according to our sources, is acknowledging opposition, using language that shows respect while introducing alternatives. I understand your position, but I'd like to propose an alternative.
This is linguistic diplomacy in action. Starting with, I understand your position, just disarms the counterparty. You are signaling that you have listened, you've validated their viewpoint, and you've internalized their concern. This act of validation is crucial because it makes them exponentially more receptive to hearing the alternative that follows.
So you never jump straight to the but.
Never. Always start with the acknowledgement.
The ultimate goal is focusing on shared goals, emphasizing mutual benefit. We see, I'm confident we can find a mutually beneficial solution here.
And the even more direct, classic negotiation framing. I believe this proposal represents a win-win situation for both companies. This is crucial. It frames the discussion away from being a zero-sum contest where one side wins and the other loses, and instead positions it as a path toward a long-term partnership. It's a strategic choice to emphasize collaboration over competition.
But doesn't using mutually beneficial solutions sometimes sound a little manipulative, especially if the deal is clearly lopsided?
That is the risk, absolutely. The phrase only works if it is backed by genuine concessions. To make it credible, the language of mutuality needs to be immediately followed by phrases that explore flexibility. For example,
Hmm.
I think there might be some room for negotiation on that point.
That language possibly explore, and I think there might be some room. It's strategically soft. It invites flexibility without committing to a specific boundary yet. You're probing for movement.
Exactly. It suggests potential movement without defining the limits of that movement, which is essential to maintain leverage. If you immediately define your boundary, you lose all your room to maneuver.
And often, in a high-stakes negotiation, you need a tactical pause, a timeout phrase to leverage your internal process. The classic phrase, "Let me consult with my team and get back to you with our final offer."
That phrase is a highly effective tactical maneuver. It allows you to pause the interaction, remove yourself from the immediate pressure of the table, depersonalize the counteroffer.
Right, shifting blame or responsibility to the team.
Yes. And reevaluate strategy, all while maintaining absolute professionalism. It is one of the most powerful tools for managing pressure and ensuring that major concessions are not made impulsively.
And the crucial question in any negotiation, identifying the precise roadblocks. What concerns do you have about moving forward with this proposal?
That question is brilliant because it shifts the burden of definition back to the other side. It forces them to articulate the exact remaining issues, which moves the conversation from vague disagreement to specific, solvable friction points. Once a concern is articulated, you can address it directly rather than just guessing where the resistance lies.
That brings us squarely to part 4. Managing people and projects. This is the language required to manage internal stakeholders, allocate resources, and foster a productive, functional corporate environment. This is really the language of execution.
This section covers the phrases that operationalize work. It's the language of delegation, accountability, and cultural stewardship, the tools that manage human capital effectively.
Starting with teamwork and collaboration, we need clear assignment language. I think we should divide these tasks among the team members.
Clarity in delegation is the first step toward efficiency. It prevents overlap and confusion. But true, thoughtful leadership goes beyond simple division. It involves the strategic management of human assets. Let's leverage each team member's unique strengths and expertise.
So it's not just about dividing tasks evenly.
No, it's optimizing allocation based on proven ability, signaling that you understand and value individual contributions.
And there's the language focused on shaping soft skills and the working environment, the proactive approach. Could we implement a system for sharing knowledge and best practices?
That phrase is focused on institutional growth. Implementing a system of formal structure promotes collective learning and prevents valuable knowledge from being siloed. Similarly, leadership language often addresses culture directly. I'd like to foster a more supportive and inclusive team environment. This is a mandate setting a cultural standard for psychological safety and mutual respect, which is a key driver of long-term productivity.
And crucially, acknowledging success. The source emphasizes specific recognition. I'd like to acknowledge Sarah's outstanding contribution to this project.
Specific, public acknowledgement is exponentially more motivating than generic praise like "good job, team." When you tie the recognition directly to a measurable achievement, outstanding contribution to this project, you reinforce the exact behavior you want to see repeated and validate the individual's effort in a tangible way.
Transitioning to project management and tracking, the language here is all about defining scope, addressing issues, and managing timelines. We need to establish parameters early. Let's establish clear roles and responsibilities for each team member.
This phrase is foundational risk mitigation. Lack of clarity in roles guarantees project friction and delay. Furthermore, proactive management involves foresight. Let's identify potential bottlenecks before they become major issues. This frames management as predictive and preventative rather than purely reactive.
It encourages a culture of systemic analysis. For timeline management, we need language for setting expectations and, when necessary, for correcting course. The sources give us the language of reality. We're currently running behind schedule and need to accelerate our timeline.
That is a clear, unambiguous statement of reality coupled with a required, aggressive action. It defines the current state and mandates a necessary change in velocity. If the project requires correction, you need the language to allocate resources. Let's allocate additional resources to ensure we meet the deadline. This is the critical linkage between investment and outcome recovery. You are explicitly linking the need for more capital, whether time, money, or manpower, to a mandated deliverable.
We also have documentation and quality assurance language emphasizing consistency. We need to document all changes to the project scope and communicate them clearly.
Documentation ensures consistency, transparency, and traceability. Every project needs this phrase to manage scope creep. The quality focus must also be absolute. Could we please ensure that all deliverables meet the specified quality standards? This makes quality a non-negotiable metric that is defined and measured, linking the language of quality directly to the organizational standard.
Within people management, we shift to the language of human resources and development, particularly performance reviews. This requires formal structures for growth. I'd like to discuss your achievements and areas for improvement this quarter.
That phrasing is linguistically balanced. It starts with the positives, achievements, and then introduces the concept of growth, areas for improvement. This structure signals that the conversation is primarily development-focused rather than punitive, which makes the recipient much more open to receiving the feedback.
And the specific growth-oriented feedback language. I'd like to provide you with constructive feedback on your recent project work.
The word constructive is key. It positions the feedback not as a criticism, but as guidance designed to build professional capability. If you simply say feedback, it can imply judgment. Constructive feedback implies investment in the employee's future success.
For career planning, the phrases focus on future vision, demonstrating organizational commitment. Let's set some specific professional development goals for the coming year.
This is collaborative planning. It shows organizational investment in the employee's long-term trajectory. You are also exploring their ambition directly. Could we discuss your career aspirations and how we can support them? This is the language of talent retention, linking the individual's ambitions directly to organizational resources.
And let's not forget recognition and motivation phrases that highlight value in granular terms. Your dedication to quality work has been noticed and truly appreciated.
That uses specific high-value attributes, dedication and quality work, rather than generic words, giving the feedback substantial weight. Similarly, I want to recognize your innovative approach to solving complex problems, validates creative thinking and risk-taking. This type of formal, specific recognition is crucial to building loyalty and high performance.
Okay, we are now moving into part 5, which deals with the specific technical vocabulary used when discussing money, investment, and long-term planning, financial health, and strategic direction. This is really the language of executive decision-making where the cost of ambiguity is highest.
The language here has to prioritize functional clarity. When you're discussing money, ambiguity is not just inefficient. It can be financially catastrophic.
Starting with finance and budgeting, we need financial reporting language for essential clarity. Could you please provide a breakdown of our quarterly expenses?
The word breakdown is so functional. It is not asking for a summary total, but it demands granularity, forcing the reporting to move beyond simple P&L totals and into itemized categories, often sorted by department, cost center, or vendor.
It's a key mechanism of fiscal control.
Exactly. It's designed to identify inefficiencies or emerging cost trends.
For performance metrics, we analyze returns and viability. We need to analyze our return on investment for this marketing campaign.
ROI is the critical metric that links spending to measurable outcomes. The language here demands accountability for resources spent. We also see the language of fiscal responsibility, enforcing control. We need to implement stricter budget controls to improve our cash flow.
Stricter budget controls is the explicit mandate for immediate operational change aimed at optimizing liquidity and managing expenses, often signaling a period of caution or resource constraint.
Right. And for risk and investment, the sources articulate strategic prudence through diversification. I believe we should diversify our revenue streams to minimize financial risk. This is the executive language of balancing volatility and securing long-term stability.
And planning for the unexpected is vital. I recommend establishing a contingency fund for unexpected business expenses. That's a formal mechanism for organizational resilience, transforming potential disaster into a manageable budgetary line item.
Shifting to strategy and market position, we use structured planning terms for foundational analysis. Could you please conduct a SWOT analysis of our current market position?
The SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, is a universally understood framework. Using this specific terminology signals that the planning process will be structured, analytical, and comprehensive, rather than anecdotal.
And when you're using this framework, the language is distinct. For instance, the language used to define a weakness, which is an internal manageable deficiency, differs sharply from the language used to define a threat, an external potentially catastrophic event. A weakness might be our slow adoption rate of new software, whereas a threat might be new competitive legislation in Q3.
So the language directs the type of action required: internal improvement versus external defense. And we use the language of prioritization. I believe we should focus on our core competencies and competitive advantages. This is strategic self-awareness, directing limited resources where the company has the greatest proven strength, minimizing waste on peripheral activities.
And for future proofing, we look to identify trends and preparation. Let's identify emerging trends that could impact our industry significantly. That phrase mandates proactive intelligence gathering, searching for signals of future disruption.
And the concept of preparation is formalized through modeling. Let's conduct scenario planning to prepare for various possible futures. This moves strategic discussion beyond simple linear forecasting into modeling different high-impact possibilities: best case, worst case, and most likely allowing the organization to draft preemptive responses.
And finally, competitive intelligence requires external awareness. Could you provide insights into our competitors' recent strategic moves? This demonstrates the necessary external focus. Strategic language is often comparative, ensuring that internal plans are formulated with a clear understanding of the market landscape and what rivals are doing.
That was the backbone of traditional corporate function. Part 6 moves us into modern business complexity, the specialized and urgent language needed for digital transformation, emergency response, and data management.
This language reflects the rapid evolution of technology and the absolute necessity of preparedness in a high-risk world.
Starting with digital transformation and technology, we have the language of adoption. We need to embrace emerging technologies to stay competitive in the market.
Embrace is a strong verb. It indicates a mandated, proactive cultural shift, not just a simple hardware upgrade. It implies a change in mindset from the top down. For specific tech discussion points like AI and automation, we see phrases like, "Could you explain how artificial intelligence might transform our business processes?"
That question demands a high-level strategic overview of AI's functional impact, requiring the speaker to move beyond theory and into operational change. We also have, let's explore automation opportunities to improve efficiency and reduce costs. That explicitly links technology investment directly to bottom-line operational benefits.
For infrastructure and security, the language is formal, centered on assessment and risk. The sources point to the formal review. We should conduct a technology audit to assess our current infrastructure.
An audit is a formal, comprehensive review, a serious undertaking that goes beyond a simple check. It suggests a systematic, critical examination of systems against established standards. And then there's the critical risk management phrase that puts security first. I'd like to discuss the cybersecurity implications of our new technology adoption.
That mandates that risk analysis precedes the technological deployment, integrating security planning right into the decision-making process.
Moving to crisis management, the language switches to immediate coordinated action. The response must be defined immediately and carefully. We need to assess the situation carefully and develop an immediate response plan.
The emphasis on carefully and immediate signals, controlled urgency. You are demanding speed, but not panic. And when the situation is critical, you must formally gather leadership. I'd like to convene an emergency meeting to address this critical issue. That uses procedural language, convene, to formalize the urgency and signal the severity of the problem.
Stakeholder communication requires emphasizing values and transparency, which is a key trust mechanism. We must maintain transparency while managing the public relations aspects of this crisis.
This prioritizes ethical communication alongside damage control, ensuring that the organization's reputation is managed alongside the technical crisis. We must also communicate proactively. I believe we should communicate proactively with our stakeholders about the situation.
And preparedness requires formalizing resilience, moving from ad hoc reaction to structured response. Let's establish a crisis communication protocol for future emergency situations.
A protocol is a formalized, tested plan, ensuring predictable and coordinated behavior under extreme stress. It prevents individual managers from making potentially damaging statements. And testing that plan is essential. I believe we should conduct regular crisis simulation exercises to test our preparedness. This moves crisis management from theory to practical, actionable competency, building organizational muscle memory.
Finally, let's look at data and analytics. This is the language of making data actionable and treating it as a strategic asset. We focus on implementation. We need to implement advanced analytics tools to derive insights from our data.
That phrase transforms raw data into value creation. The goal isn't storing data, it's deriving insights, which is the functional difference between an IT expenditure and a strategic investment. For governance and metrics, we need to set standards for quality and measurement. I'd like to establish data governance policies to ensure accuracy and security.
Governance signals that the data is being treated as a strategic asset, requiring formal control over its source, cleanliness, and security. We also use clear performance measurement language. Could you develop key performance indicators to measure our business success?
KPIs are the explicit, agreed-upon metrics that define success and failure. They are the linguistic contract for measurement, and the organizational shift is reflected in the culture-cultivating phrase. I believe we need to create a data-driven culture throughout the organization. This is an organizational mandate for collective data awareness, ensuring that decisions at all levels are informed by evidence, not just anecdote.
That is a deep dive into high-level functional language, moving from the tangible, like meetings, to the abstract, like strategy. Now we turn outwards in Part 7, building external relationships, focusing on networking and customer service.
This final section contrasts the soft, relationship-building language of professional outreach with the firm, sincere language required for service recovery and client retention.
In networking, first impressions require specific, appreciative language showing immediate engagement. It's a pleasure to meet you. Could you tell me about your role here?
That question achieves several things. It uses a professional courtesy, pleasure to meet you, and provides an easy, low-pressure entry point into conversation by asking about their role. We also see strategic flattery through specific appreciation. I've heard excellent things about your expertise in supply chain management. This validates the individual's professional standing and focuses the conversation immediately on a shared area of interest.
Seeking knowledge requires polite request language that acknowledges the value of their time. I'd appreciate the opportunity to pick your brain about emerging market trends.
Picking your brain is the widely accepted, slightly informal yet respectful way to request mentorship or expert insight without demanding formal consultation time or implying a fee structure. It is a linguistic shortcut for valuing their experience.
For scheduling and connecting, we use low-commitment invitations. Could we schedule a coffee meeting to discuss potential business opportunities?
The coffee meeting signals low commitment and low pressure. A short, informal interaction which makes it easier for a busy person to agree to. It's a stepping stone toward a more significant engagement. And in the modern context, formalizing the digital connection is essential. Could I possibly connect with you on LinkedIn to stay in touch professionally? That phrase respects the boundaries of professional digital networking.
Okay, shifting focus entirely to customer relations and apology, we start with the professional opening that frames the interaction. How may I assist you with your inquiry today?
This opening establishes the relationship as transactional, service-focused, and centered on problem resolution immediately. But when things inevitably go wrong, the language has to be strong and sincere to diffuse tension.
The source material stresses sincere, strong language for apology. I sincerely apologize for the inconvenience you've experienced and the immediate commitment to fixing it. I understand your frustration and want to resolve this issue quickly.
Using sincerely adds crucial, authentic weight to the apology. And even more critically, acknowledging frustration validates the customer's emotional state. You are not just addressing the technical problem, you are addressing the emotional impact.
Which is a vital step toward genuine resolution.
And retention. The focus then immediately shifts to swift correction.
Finally, reinforcing brand promises and commitment to excellence closes the loop on a positive note. Your satisfaction is our top priority, and we're committed to making this right.
And the final restatement of value. We're committed to providing you with exceptional customer service. This phrase reinforces the brand's core promise, ensuring that the service recovery process actually strengthens rather than damages the overall client relationship. It transforms a complaint into an opportunity to prove value.
Wow. We have successfully tracked the entire functional language spectrum of corporate life, from, the formality of calling a meeting to order to the establishment of predictive modeling strategies and contingency funds. These targeted functional phrases are just undeniably the backbone of effective corporate communication across every single department.
And this is the crucial takeaway for you, the learner. The formality, the structure, and the specificity embedded in this business English toolkit are fundamentally about minimizing ambiguity and establishing professional credibility. When you use these precise phrases, "I'll circle back," or "let's assess the financial viability," or "I'd like to table this discussion," you are demonstrating command not just over vocabulary, but over the underlying organizational function itself, whether that's financial analysis, project sequencing, or crisis response.
That is so powerful. Using the right words doesn't just make you sound competent, it proves you understand the underlying process and procedure, the mechanism of the corporate world.
It's exactly. Fluency in this business context means you always have the specialized linguistic tool that precisely matches the organizational task at hand, enabling seamless professional execution.
So as you integrate this business English toolkit into your professional life, here's a final thought for you to chew on. If you could only choose 3 phrases from this entire deep dive to commit to memory today, which 3 would instantly give you the most perceived authority and control in your very next professional interaction, and why?
Okay, let's unpack this. Today's deep dive is really custom tailored for you. We're focusing on a very specific kind of fluency. Fluency in, well, business English. And we're not talking about just translating words or, memorizing grammar rules. This is about deploying high-leverage phrases, the sort of linguistic blueprints you need to project authority and competence. In basically every corporate scenario, we've gone through a whole stack of sources, corporate communication guides, expert manuals, even negotiation scripts, and we've boiled it all down into a toolkit. And this toolkit has phrases for everything, from, kicking off a project meeting to drafting that really delicate email that needs urgent action, but without pulling rank. So our mission today is to get past the technical stuff. We're moving into applied strategy. We'll analyze these super specific context-driven phrases across all the key business functions. So meetings, project management, finance, strategy. We're going to show you how they work and maybe more importantly, why they work.
What's really fascinating here is that fluency in a professional environment, it's fundamentally about using established linguistic scripts.
Scripts, I like that.
Yeah, they're shortcuts. They signal competence, professionalism, they let you manage expectations, and really control the narrative in some pretty demanding situations.
Right.
So for you, the learner, this deep dive is a very targeted toolkit. We're cutting through all the noise of general language learning, and we're just focusing on the things that will elevate your professional influence.
Okay, so let's start where, let's be honest, most professional communication happens.
Yeah.
In meetings, in emails.
The daily grind.
Exactly. These are the foundational rhythms of the working day. And the language you use here, it really sets the tone for everything else. Hashtag 1.1, controlling the meeting lifecycle.
So let's talk about starting a meeting. The second you open your mouth, you're setting the rules for the discussion. We found 2 phrases that do the same basic thing, get things started, but they signal completely different environments. First, you've got the welcoming, sort of collective approach. Good morning, everyone. Shall we get started?
And then you have the very formal, almost declarative one. I'd like to call this meeting to order.
The difference is huge, right?
Oh, it's immense. The first one is collaborative. It says we're all in this together. It suggests a flatter hierarchy, for this meeting at least. It's high rapport, low rigidity.
But call this meeting to order, that's different. It's not an invitation.
Not at all. It's a statement. It's a change of status. The person saying that is immediately the authority figure. It signals that this environment is formal, structured, maybe even governed by rules, like a board meeting.
So choosing one over the other is a strategic choice. It's your first move, and it's a critical one for managing expectations. So, okay, the meeting has started. Now comes the hard part, managing focus. We've all been in meetings that just drift.
Oh, yeah. Lost to the tangents.
Exactly. So you have your basic transition phrase. Let's move on to the next item on the agenda. That's simple enough. But the one we really need to break down is the intervention. The one that pulls a meeting back from chaos without, making enemies.
And the phrase for that is, I think we're getting off track here. Can we refocus?
This is a linguistic masterstroke. Really, if you just said, John, stop talking, you're wasting our time, well, you've just alienated John.
Probably made everyone else uncomfortable.
Right. But this phrase, it uses the collective I think we were getting off track. It frames the problem as a group oversight, not one person's fault. It keeps the rapport intact.
And then the question, can we refocus? It's an invitation.
It's an invitation to cooperate. You're showing leadership, you know where you need to be, but you're asking for cooperation to get there, not just barking an order. That balance is, that's the core of high-level communication.
That's a great point. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about getting clarity and driving action. So you need more detail on something. How do you ask for it without putting the speaker on the defensive?
The script is, Could you please elaborate on that point a bit more?
And the softeners there are key, right? The please and a bit more.
Absolutely. That phrase is really a quality control mechanism. It's a polite way of saying, I'm listening, I'm engaged, but what you've given me so far isn't enough to make a decision. It encourages them to give you more detail without making it sound like they failed the first time.
And then, when the discussion is just going in circles and you need a decision.
You need to signal a shift.
Right. I think we should put this to a vote and see where everyone stands.
And that phrase just cuts through all the deliberation. It's the language of process. It says, okay, debate is over, time for accountability. It forces a documented, actionable decision. Hashtag 1.2 delay, conclusion, and documentation. All right, so let's move to the end of the meeting. The art of the professional postponement. This is a critical skill. And we have to talk about the word table.
Ah, yes, the great confusion of table. Because in some places it means to bring something up for discussion.
But not here. In modern corporate English, it means to defer, to put it aside. The phrase is, I'd like to table this discussion for our next meeting.
And that's a lifeline, isn't it? When some huge, complex topic comes out of nowhere and threatens to eat up the whole meeting.
It's a tool for managing scope creep, but you have to pair it with its partner phrase. Let's schedule a follow-up meeting to discuss this further.
Because that shows you're not just dismissing it.
Exactly. It shows you're committed to giving it the time it deserves, just not right now. It's responsible time management.
Speaking of time management, what about setting those boundaries at the end of a meeting that's running long?
You need to be explicit, but polite. I'd appreciate it if we could wrap this up within the next 10 minutes. The I'd appreciate it keeps it formal, but the 10 minutes is a firm, clear boundary. It shows you respect everyone's time.
Which is always a good look.
Always. And this brings us to maybe the most important phrase of all, the post-meeting commitment. I'll send out the meeting minutes by end of business today.
It sounds so simple.
It is simple, but its power is in the commitment to a specific, measurable timeline. It turns all that talk into a written, actionable record. It creates an audit trail, and you're committing to providing that trail today. It's the bedrock of accountability.
And it ensures nothing falls through the crack.
Precisely. Hashtag 1.3 high leverage email communication.
Okay, let's shift gears to the written word, email, where, there's no body language, no tone of voice to help you out.
It's a minefield, and it's a permanent record. So clarity and politeness are they're non-negotiable.
So let's start with the basics, openings and closings.
Right. These are your tonal markers. Things like, I hope this email finds you well, and of course, please don't hesitate to contact me if you have any questions. They're like a professional handshake.
You don't have to do it, but if you don't...
You can sound abrupt, demanding even. It just signals respect and accessibility.
Okay, what about follow-ups? Getting updates without being a pest.
Context is everything here. I'm writing to follow up on our conversation. That one phrase immediately grounds the email. The person reading it doesn't have to waste time figuring out what you're talking about.
And for a more casual check-in.
The go-to is, I wanted to touch base with you regarding the upcoming deadline. Touching base is great. It's informal but professional. It signals, this is just a routine check-in, not a 5-alarm fire.
Okay, but what if it is a 5-alarm fire? Or at least you need something done urgently, but you can't just order the person around.
Ah, the polite request for speed. This is high-leverage communication at its finest. The script is, I would be grateful if you could expedite this request.
Let's break that down. Grateful and expedite.
Exactly. Let's really dissect this. I would be grateful is an appeal to their goodwill. You're showing gratitude before they've even done the work. It's respectful. It's not a command.
And expedite.
Expedite is the professional term for make this go faster. It delegates the how-to. You're not telling them to drop everything. You're signaling the urgency and asking them as a professional to use their judgment to move your request up in their queue. It's so much more effective than just typing ASAP in all caps.
Yeah, that formality gives it a weight that just demanding it never could. Okay, let's talk about corporate choreography. CCing the boss.
Right. A very common move. The phrase is, I'm CCing my manager to keep them in the loop on this discussion. And this is a multifunctional tool.
How so?
Well, first, it lets the other person know that a senior person is now watching. That tends to encourage prompt professional responses.
A little healthy pressure.
A little. And second, it handles your own responsibility of keeping your manager informed. It's an efficient, passive update. No need for a separate email chain.
And what about managing timelines when you're waiting on information? to stop people from chasing you every 5 minutes.
You use this. I'll circle back with you once I have more information available.
Circle back. Classic.
It is. And it's crucial for protecting your own time. You are committing to giving them an update, but you're also setting a clear boundary. The update will happen when the information exists, not before. It's proactive expectation management.
All right, let's move into the high-stakes stuff.
Sure.
The persuasive interactions. Presentations, negotiations. This is where the right words can literally mean the difference between winning a multi-million-dollar deal and, well, not.
Yeah, the pressure is definitely on here. Precision is everything. Hashtag tag 2.1, presenting data and strategy. When you're presenting, your job is to turn a pile of data into a story, a persuasive narrative. And if your audience gets lost in the first 2 minutes, you've already failed.
So it all starts with structure.
It has to. Phrases like, I'd like to begin by outlining our agenda for today. They aren't just filler. They're a roadmap. You're managing the audience's cognitive load. You're telling them where you're going so they can relax and follow you.
And once you've set that roadmap, you have to guide them. I like this one. Let me walk you through the main points of this proposal. The word walk, it feels very controlled, very steady.
It does. It positions you as the expert guide. It's collaborative, and you have to keep signaling the turns. This brings us to our next point. You have to say it out loud, even if the slide changes. You can't assume they're with you.
Okay, so you're moving through the presentation, and now you get to the key piece of data, the big number on the chart. You can't just hope they see it.
You absolutely cannot. You have to verbally point to it. As you can see from this chart, our sales have increased significantly. You are explicitly linking the visual evidence on the screen to your verbal conclusion. There's no room for them to misunderstand what that chart means.
Or you can be even more direct.
You can. In a fast-paced meeting, you might say, I'd like to draw your attention to the key findings on slide 5. That is a command. You are directing their gaze, their focus, right where you want it. It's about controlling the spotlight.
Okay, you've shown them the data. Now you have to lock in the conclusion. Make it stick.
This is the synthesis phase. You connect the dots. This data supports our hypothesis about. You're tying that specific piece of evidence back to the big picture, the overall story.
And the conclusion itself has to be strong.
Definitive. In conclusion, I believe these results clearly demonstrate our success. That's confident. It signals closure. Then you immediately follow with a summary. Let me summarize the key takeaways. This is your last chance to make sure everyone leaves with the same core message.
And then the call to action, the whole point of the presentation.
Exactly. The highest leverage phrase here is the pivot from analysis to action. Based on this analysis, I recommend we proceed with the implementation phase. This shows the presentation wasn't just for information, it was to drive a decision. Hashtag 2.2, the language of negotiation and compromise. Negotiation is, well, it might be the most complex verbal dance of all. You have to be firm, but flexible, professional, but also build rapport.
And the most important first step, according to our sources, is acknowledging the other side's point of view before you say anything else.
Yes. The phrase is perfectly balanced. I understand your position, but I'd like to propose an alternative.
Let's talk about why that structure is so powerful. That I understand your position comes first.
Because it validates them. It immediately lowers their defenses. They don't feel dismissed. It sets a collaborative tone. It says, I've heard you, I respect your view, now let's solve this problem together. And then you pivot with, but, to introduce your idea.
That sequence is everything.
It is. It's the difference between a collaboration and a confrontation. You also need language that actively looks for that middle ground. Something like, could we possibly explore some middle ground on this issue? It's a softener. It signals you're willing to move.
And this one is great for setting a positive frame. I'm confident we can find a mutually beneficial solution here.
That phrase is so strategic. It frames the entire negotiation not as a zero-sum game, but as a shared opportunity. It's foundational for building a long-term partnership. You're basically saying, we're going to find a way for both of us to win.
But sometimes you get stuck. You need to figure out what the real roadblock is.
That's when you ask the diagnostic question. What concerns do you have about moving forward with this proposal? It's open-ended. It invites them to share the information that might be holding back.
And once you know the concern, you can propose the trade-off. I'd like to suggest a compromise that addresses both of our needs. But I want to come back to tabling here in a negotiation. Could we table the pricing discussion and focus on the contract terms first?
This is such a high-level strategic move. Price is almost always the most emotional, most contentious point.
Right.
So if you can table it, set it aside, and get agreement on everything else first. The scope of work, the deliverables, the legal stuff. You build momentum. You build a foundation of agreement. By the time you come back to the price, it's just one last problem to solve together, not the thing the entire deal hinges on. It's a brilliant way to manage the flow. Hashtag, 2.3 excellence in customer service. Okay, customer service. This is all about managing perception during times of stress. The language has to be empathetic, professional, and signal immediate action.
Your initial contact has to set the right tone. A simple, "How may I assist you with your inquiry today?" But if there's a problem, you have to show sincere regret immediately.
And the phrase for that is, "I sincerely apologize for the inconvenience you've
The
experienced."
word sincerely seems to be doing a lot of heavy lifting there.
It's the key element. A simple sorry can sound robotic, like you're just reading a script. "I sincerely apologize" conveys a much deeper level of seriousness and regret. It's an instant de-escalation tool, especially if the customer is already angry.
It resets the emotional temperature.
It does. And you follow it up by validating their feeling. "I understand your frustration and want to resolve this issue quickly." You acknowledge their emotion. "I understand your frustration," which builds rapport, and then you pivot straight to the solution. Resolve this issue quickly.
And to do that, you need to show you have a process. "Let me look into this matter immediately and get back to you." That shows ownership.
It does. Or if you need to bring someone else in, you manage that expectation. "I'll escalate this to our technical team for a thorough investigation." That can actually make the customer feel valued, like their problem is serious enough to warrant a higher level of resources.
And the ultimate commitment phrase.
"Your satisfaction is our top priority, and we're committed to making this right." That's the company mission statement in a single sentence. It signals you're willing to invest to fix the relationship.
And finally, you want to turn that interaction into a long-term relationship.
Right. You ask for feedback. "We truly value your feedback." And you close with an eye to the future. "We appreciate your continued partnership and look forward to future collaboration." It's all about relationship maintenance.
Okay, let's turn inward. We're now talking about the specialized language used inside an organization. This is less about external persuasion and more about creating clarity, accountability, and efficient structures.
Exactly. This is about making the machine run smoothly. Hashtag 3.1 collaboration and team leadership. So getting a team to collaborate effectively, it starts with signaling a shift from just, talking to actual constructive action. The classic phrase here is, "Let's brainstorm some creative solutions to this challenge we're facing."
Brainstorm
Yeah.
is an invitation to just throw ideas out there, no judgment.
It's a low-friction way to kickstart creativity. But creativity needs structure, especially when you start assigning tasks. You have to define who does what.
Let's establish clear roles and responsibilities for each team member.
That phrase, or some version of it, is maybe the single most important one in team execution. If you don't say that, you get overlap, you get things getting dropped. It creates instant, verifiable accountability.
It removes all the ambiguity.
All of it. And a good leader also thinks about how to assign those tasks, not just randomly. So you use language like, "Let's leverage each team member's unique strengths and expertise." That's motivating. It shows you see and value the individuals on your team.
What about building that positive culture? Recognition is a big part of that.
It is, and it needs to be specific, not just "good job, team." A high-leverage phrase is, "I'd like to acknowledge Sarah's outstanding contribution to this project."
That's very formal. I'd like to acknowledge.
It's strategic. It's public, formal recognition. It reinforces the behavior you want to see, and it builds morale. It's a critical retention tool.
And on the flip side, what about improving the environment itself?
You use growth-focused language. "I'd like to foster a more supportive and inclusive team environment." This signals that team culture isn't just some fluffy HR thing. It's a performance enabler. Hashtag 3.2 rigorous project management.
All right, project management. This requires a verbal framework of, rigor and foresight. It has to be tight.
It absolutely does, and it starts with planning, demanding detail right from the beginning.
Could you please provide a detailed breakdown of the project requirements?
Without that, you're just operating on assumptions, and assumptions lead to scope creep and missed deadlines every single time.
And those requirements have to lead to a realistic plan.
Right. We need to establish realistic timelines for each phase of the project. This is all about managing expectations. Setting a team up for failure with an impossible deadline is a leadership failure.
Okay, so the plan is set.
Yeah.
Now we're into monitoring and looking for trouble ahead.
You establish a rhythm, sure. "I'd like to schedule weekly status meetings to track our progress." But the most crucial phrase here, the one for proactive risk management, is let's identify potential bottlenecks before they become major issues.
Let's unpack that. Bottlenecks. A point where work just gets stuck.
Exactly. Maybe one developer is overloaded, or you're waiting on one key approval. If you don't use language that forces you to look ahead and find that bottleneck, it will become a major issue that stalls the whole project. This phrase makes risk management a forward-looking duty, not just a review of what's already gone wrong.
And when things do go wrong, when you're behind schedule.
You have to be direct, but solution-focused. We're currently running behind schedule and need to accelerate our timeline. It states the problem, doesn't blame anyone, and immediately moves to the corrective action.
And finally, you have to close the loop. Learn from the project.
Every time. I'd like to conduct a post-project review to identify lessons learned. This is how you systematize success and failure. You turn it into institutional knowledge so you don't make the same mistakes twice. Hashtag 3.3, performance, career, and HR language.
Okay, now for some of the most sensitive conversations. Performance reviews, feedback, HR discussions. The language here has to be so precise, formal, but also empathetic.
It's a real balancing act. For a performance review, the opening phrase sets the entire tone. It has to be balanced from the start. I'd like to discuss your achievements and areas for improvement this quarter.
So you're leading with both, the good and the developmental.
You have to. It shows the review is holistic. Then, when you give praise, make it specific. Your dedication to quality work has been noticed and truly appreciated. Linking it to a specific quality makes it feel genuine.
And for the feedback part, the areas for improvement.
The word to use is constructive. I'd like to provide you with constructive feedback on your recent project work. Constructive reframes it. It's not criticism. It's a tool for growth. It makes it so much easier for the person to hear it.
And this all needs to tie into their future, their career.
That's the engine of retention. You need future-oriented language. I believe you have great potential for leadership roles in our organization. You're actively encouraging them to see a long-term path with the company.
And you formalize that with a question.
Exactly, a partnership question. Could we discuss your career aspirations and how we can support them? And then you lock it in. Let's set some specific professional development goals for the coming year. It becomes a concrete, shared plan.
All right, we're moving up to the C-suite, the highest level of strategic talk. Fiscal health, long-term vision, navigating huge organizational change. This is the language of big-picture strategy.
And it demands the highest level of analytical precision. Hashtag 4.1, financial health and accountability. The language around money is all about review and accountability. You have to demand data-driven justification for everything. For example, we need to analyze our return on investment for this marketing campaign. It connects every dollar spent to a measurable result.
And when the results don't match the plan, the question you have to ask is, could you explain the variance between our projected and actual results?
That question is the starting gun for a deep dive. It's not just noting a miss, it's demanding to know why. Was the plan wrong? Was the execution flawed? Did the market change? It's essential for financial governance.
Yeah, looking forward.
It's proactive. Let's review the financial projections for the upcoming fiscal year, but it's also about risk. I believe we should diversify our revenue streams to minimize financial risk. This ensures you're not putting all your eggs in one basket.
And then there's the language of preparing for the unknown.
The safety net. I recommend establishing a contingency fund for unexpected business expenses. It's the phrase that signals mature, robust financial planning. Hashtag 4.2, strategic direction and market positioning. When you're talking big picture strategy, you have to start with a clear-eyed assessment of where you are right now. And the classic tool for that is captured in the phrase, could you please conduct a SWOT analysis of our current market position?
Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats.
It's the foundation. It grounds your entire strategy in reality. From there, you have to focus. You can't be everything to everyone. The phrase that forces this is, I believe we should focus on our core competencies and competitive advantages.
It's the language of ruthless prioritization.
It has to be. And because the market is always changing, you need foresight. Let's identify emerging trends that could impact our industry significantly. But the phrase that signals truly advanced, proactive leadership is this one. Let's conduct scenario planning to prepare for various possible futures.
Scenario planning, so not just one forecast.
Not just one. This demands that you wargame multiple realities. A best-case scenario, a worst case, a major market disruption. It makes an organization resilient and ready for change, not just reactive to it. Hashtag 4.3, navigating organizational change and crisis. And speaking of change, when a real crisis hits, the language has to signal calm, structured action, not panic. We need to assess the situation carefully and develop an immediate response plan.
First things first, get everyone in a room. I'd like to convene an emergency meeting to address this critical issue.
Yeah, exactly. But the most difficult part is often the public communication. The phrase that captures that tension is, we must maintain transparency while managing the public relations aspects of this crisis.
That sounds like walking a tightrope.
It is. It commits you to honesty, to transparency, but it also acknowledges that your communication has to be strategic to protect the organization's reputation. It's a commitment to both ethics and brand protection.
And for less sudden, more planned organizational changes.
It's all about rationale inclusion. You have to start with the why. We need to communicate the rationale behind these organizational changes clearly. If people don't understand why the change is happening, they will resist.
And you have to bring them into the process.
You have to. I believe we should involve key stakeholders in the change planning process. And then you open the door for feedback. Could we create a feedback mechanism to address concerns during the transition? This turns a top-down mandate into a managed, inclusive process. It dramatically increases your chances of success. Okay, for our last section, we're diving into some highly specialized areas. Here, the language has to be incredibly precise. It reflects a rigorous analytical approach to operations, hashtag 5.1, quality management, and continuous improvement.
Quality management. Yeah. This is all about the vocabulary of high standards, setting benchmarks that are, well, non-negotiable.
You start by establishing the baseline. We need to implement rigorous quality control measures throughout our production process. The word rigorous is key. It signals that this is comprehensive, not just a spot check.
And you have to be able to measure it.
Right. No abstract goals. I'd like to establish clear metrics for measuring customer satisfaction levels. You turn excellence into a number you can track. But the most important phrase here is about what you do when something goes wrong.
We need to identify root causes of quality issues rather than just treating symptoms.
This is the absolute core of continuous improvement. Treating the symptom is fixing one broken part. Identifying the root cause is fixing the process so that broken part can never be made again. This language signals a commitment to true systemic thinking. Hashtag 5.2, supply chain and operational efficiency. The language of supply chain is hyper-focused on optimization, cost-cutting, and managing risk in your network of suppliers.
It's all about efficiency. We need to optimize our inventory management to reduce carrying costs significantly. Or, I'd like to implement just-in-time delivery systems to minimize warehouse expenses.
These phrases signal deep expertise in lean methodology. It's about trimming every ounce of fat from the system, but it's also about resilience. We should establish backup suppliers to mitigate risks in our supply chain. That's your insurance policy against disruption.
And we saw a very modern, specific phrase in the sources. Could you assess the feasibility of nearshoring to reduce lead times?
Yes. And for anyone who's not deep in supply chain jargon, nearshoring just means moving your production to a country that's closer to home than your traditional offshore locations.
To cut down on shipping time, the lead times.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This one phrase can kick off a major strategic study with huge financial implications. It shows an adaptive mindset using the precise technical language needed to navigate global economic shifts. Hashtag 5.3 data and technology-driven language.
All right, our final stop. The language of digital transformation, using data and tech to get a competitive edge.
Here, you have to frame tech investment as a necessity, not a luxury. We need to embrace emerging technologies to stay competitive in the market. It has to be paired with a commitment. I believe we should invest in digital transformation initiatives across our organization.
And leaders need to be asking the big questions. Could you explain how artificial intelligence might transform our business processes?
But using all this data means you have to trust it. That's where data governance comes in. I'd like to establish data governance policies to ensure accuracy and security. This is the critical framework that ensures data integrity.
And it's not just about looking at past data.
No, it's about looking forward. Let's implement predictive modeling to forecast future trends and patterns. It's the shift from describing what happened to predicting what will happen.
And the end goal of all this tech?
Speed, the ultimate competitive advantage, which is why the final phrase is so important. Could we implement real-time reporting to enable faster decision-making processes? That phrase connects all the complex tech stuff directly to critical, immediate business value. Faster, smarter decisions. Hashtag outro.
So what does this all mean? Well, we've gone on a pretty comprehensive tour of the professional world today, and I think one thing is clear. Business English fluency,
Hmm.
it's less about how many words you know and much, much more about mastering these specific actionable phrases for the right context. Whether you're in a boardroom, in an email chain, or planning a global supply chain, there is a strategic script that you can deploy.
Hmm.
For you, the listener, the takeaway is simple. Fluency is competence in context. When you internalize these phrases, you're not just translating your thoughts anymore. You're starting to sound, act, and, well, lead like an authoritative professional in English. You stop translating, you start executing.
And if we just zoom out for a final thought here, think about how many of the phrases we discussed were dedicated to documentation.
That's a great point.
We talked about documenting project changes, documenting quality issues, conducting post-project reviews, creating minutes over and over
The
again.
paper trail.
Exactly. This huge emphasis suggests that in the business world, communication isn't just about moving forward or persuading people. It's just as much about creating a complete, traceable, and defensible record of every single decision made. The language itself is designed to build that audit trail.
So the provocative thought is,
The provocative thought for you to consider is this. How effectively do the phrases you use right now create that quiet, critical, traceable record of your professional life? And how might optimizing that specific language not just help you succeed, but actually protect you and your organization down the line?